My name is Aisha Rahman. I was born in a small town called Tamana, tucked deep in the desert region of northern Algeria. Life there was simple, yet strict. From the outside, our family seemed like every other in the village. We lived in a modest clay house with narrow corridors and cool, dimly lit rooms that smelled faintly of spices and dust. My father, Ibrahim Rahman, was a respected man in the community, not because he was wealthy, but because he was deeply religious. People often came to him for advice on matters of faith. My mother, Fatima, was quiet but strong. She carried the burden of raising 6 children while also fulfilling her role as a faithful Muslim woman, obedient, unseen, and unquestioning. From as early as I can remember, our daily lives revolved around Islam. Before the first light touched the hills of Tamana, my father's voice would fill the house. He would wake us for Fajr prayer, and none of us dared ignore his call. At 5 years old, I remember being shaken gently awake, shivering in the morning air, my small forehead pressed against the cold, patterned rug as I tried to keep up with the prayers. The words felt heavy on my tongue, but I repeated them, line after line, not truly knowing what they meant, but knowing well enough that not saying them was not an option. My days were structured like clockwork. Prayers 5 times a day. Memorizing verses from the Quran. Listening to my father explain the punishments awaiting those who disobey Allah. Questioning was not tolerated. In our house, religion was not a choice, it was the air we breathed, the rule we followed without argument. If ever a doubt flickered in our minds, we learned to choke it down before it could grow. Fear was stitched into our faith. I remember my mother once catching me daydreaming during Quran recitation. She didn't raise her voice, but her eyes filled with sadness, like she feared for my soul. That moment stayed with me. It wasn't the punishment I feared most, it was disappointing her. Disappointing all of them. That's how it worked. Our love for family and fear of their disappointment kept us in line just as much as fear of Allah's judgment. But deep inside, where no one could see, questions began to form. I didn't know where they came from. At first, they whispered softly. Why does Allah feel so far away? Why do I feel empty after every prayer? Why am I afraid to ask? I pushed these thoughts aside, but they kept coming back. I was 12 when I first noticed something I couldn't explain. It was during Ramadan. After long hours of fasting, my family gathered for iftar, the breaking of the fast. I should have felt proud for enduring the hunger, but instead, I felt hollow. As I watched my father pray, my siblings laugh, my mother quietly serve food without eating herself until we all had, I felt like I was standing outside myself, watching a life that wasn't truly mine. I couldn't explain the ache inside. I convinced myself it was weakness, maybe the hunger playing tricks on my heart. Years passed. The rituals continued. School offered no relief. In our village, girls were taught the basics reading, writing, but mostly, we were prepared for marriage and obedience. The idea of a different future was as distant as the mountains that framed Tamana. But still, the questions lived inside me, buried under layers of fear. I tried harder. I fasted more strictly. I prayed longer. But every night, when I lay on my thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, the emptiness pressed down on me. I remember one night whispering into the darkness, "Are you real? Do you hear me?" I wasn't sure who I was speaking to. It didn't feel like Allah. It felt like someone else. Someone I hadn't been introduced to yet. One morning, I woke up from a dream I couldn't forget. In the dream, I was walking alone in the desert, lost. The sun burned my skin. I cried out for help, but no one answered. Suddenly, a man in white appeared ahead of me. His face glowed, yet I couldn't see his features clearly. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. And though the desert raged around me, when I looked at him, I felt peace. I told no one about the dream. Who could I tell? My father would call it Shaitan's deception. My mother would tell me to seek forgiveness. So, I kept it locked inside. But that dream stayed with me. It felt more real than the life I was living. From that day, something changed. A quiet restlessness took root inside me. I started waking up before Fajr, not to pray, but to sit silently, watching the stars fade and the sun begin to rise. I felt like I was waiting for something, or someone. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I wasn't satisfied with the answers I'd been given my whole life. I remember thinking, maybe I'm cursed. Maybe I'm broken. But deep inside, another voice, much quieter, whispered, maybe you're searching for the truth. That scared me most of all. And yet, I kept searching.
Friends, before we continue, welcome to Mysterious Uplift, the channel where real life-changing testimonies meet divine encounters. If you're someone searching for truth, hope, or inspiration, consider subscribing. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of these powerful, true stories. And if this story touches your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now, let's continue Aisha Rahman's incredible journey.
After that night, something inside me changed. I woke up the next morning carrying a strange peace, but also a quiet weight I couldn't explain. I went through the motions of the day, preparing breakfast with my mother, covering my head before stepping outside, answering my father's call for prayers, but my heart wasn't where it used to be. Each prayer felt heavier, not sacred but hollow, as though my words were falling to the ground before they could reach anywhere. And all the while, the name Isa kept repeating silently inside me, like a whisper I couldn't silence. When no one was watching, I returned to the old phone. Searching cautiously, typing slowly, deleting quickly. I knew every second online was dangerous, but I couldn't stop. I needed answers, not from the people around me, but from Isa himself. One night, as the village lay sleeping under a moonless sky, I typed in a new search, feeling both terrified and desperate, Bible in Arabic. At first, the internet failed me. Slow connections. Blocked pages. But after countless tries, a website loaded. An online Bible. I held my breath, staring at the screen, wondering if just looking at this page meant I had crossed a line I could never return from. Still, I scrolled. I didn't understand much, but I found the Book of John. The words on that old cracked screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. It wasn't just what the words said, it was how they felt. Every sentence felt alive, like they were written not for the world, but for me alone. I read slowly, clumsily, the words awkward on my tongue. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I didn't understand all of it. But deep inside, something responded. It was like hearing a voice I'd known all my life but had forgotten until now. Night after night, I returned to those pages, reading silently, carefully. My favorite was when Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life." I read that line again and again, sometimes whispering it softly, afraid of the sound of my own voice. One night, unable to bear the questions inside me any longer, I knelt beside my bed again, in the darkness, clutching the old phone like it was my only lifeline. This time, I didn't ask for proof. I didn't ask for signs. I just spoke. I don't know who you really are, Isa. I don't understand, but if you are who this book says you are, if you are more than a prophet, if you really love me, then I give you my heart. I don't know how, but I trust you. And as I whispered those words, a strange thing happened. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, not like fear, not like the hollow emptiness I had felt after prayers all my life. This was different. It felt like something, or someone, had entered the quietest corner of my soul and wrapped it in love. I couldn't stop the tears. I wept, not out of sadness, but from a release I had never known before. I felt found. I felt seen. I felt safe. That night, I knew. I had given my heart to Isa. To Jesus. But morning came, and with it, reality. My father's voice echoed through the house, calling us to prayer. I hesitated, standing there, feeling a new battle raging inside me. Before, prayer was fear. Now, it felt like betrayal not of my family, but of the one I had met in the night. I joined them anyway. I stood beside my sisters, recited the prayers, moved through the motions, but inside, I was silent. My words were empty. I wasn't praying to Allah anymore. My heart belonged elsewhere. Later that day, my mother asked me why I seemed quiet. I told her I was tired. But the truth was far more complicated. I felt like I was living a double life. In front of my family, I was the same obedient daughter. But inside, I was someone else. Someone new. Someone terrified. I started skipping some prayers, pretending to be asleep, pretending to be busy. I knew my father noticed. His eyes lingered on me longer. His voice sharpened when he spoke to me. But he said nothing, for now. Each night, I prayed to Jesus silently. I would ask him, "What do I do? How do I follow you when no one can know?" Sometimes, in the quiet, I felt his answer not in words, but in peace. Other times, I felt only fear. I knew if they discovered the truth, there would be no forgiveness. Still, despite the fear, I couldn't go back. I didn't want to. Jesus was real. His love was real. And though my family would call me lost, deep down, I knew I had finally been found. It was bound to happen. I knew that. Every night when I whispered prayers to Jesus, every moment I dared to skip a ritual or hesitate during a prayer, I knew I was risking everything. But when it finally came, I wasn't ready. Not for the way it unfolded. Not for the way it felt. It was my younger brother, Karim, who found the phone. It wasn't even supposed to be in his hands. I had hidden it in the folds of my mattress, wrapped in old cloth. But one afternoon, while I was helping my mother prepare bread in the courtyard, he went into the room looking for my missing headscarf. Instead, he found the phone. I heard his voice first. Confused. Angry. He kept repeating one word that made my blood turn to ice. Injil, the Bible. I rushed inside, my heart beating like it would burst through my ribs. The look on his face, I can't forget it. Not fear, not confusion, but something worse. Disgust. He had opened the browser. He had seen the bookmarked page. He had seen everything. My father came moments later. My mother, too. "What is this, Aisha?" My father's voice was low, dangerous. I couldn't speak. He snatched the phone from Karim's hand, scrolling through it, his fingers trembling not from fear but rage. He read silently, then turned to me, his eyes burning. "You read the words of the Kufr," he spat. "You study the book of the Christians." I opened my mouth to explain, but what could I say? That I had found peace in Isa? That his love felt more real than all the years of prayers? That Jesus had filled the emptiness I never knew how to explain? None of that would matter. Not to him. I stayed silent. That silence sealed my fate. My father raised his hand and struck me across the face. My cheek burned from the blow, but I didn't cry out. My mother watched, saying nothing, her face frozen in horror. My sisters stood behind her, trembling, afraid to meet my eyes. My father paced the room like a caged animal. He kept repeating, "Apostate, kafira, betrayer." Finally, he turned to my mother. "She has turned against Allah. Against us. What choice do we have?" I thought my mother would beg for mercy. But she didn't. She only nodded slowly, tears glistening but unshed. They dragged me outside. My cries fell silent. What was the point of screaming? In my village, fathers did not need permission to discipline their children. Even if neighbors heard, no one would intervene. They bound my hands. I remember the coarse rope cutting into my wrists. I remember the rough sand beneath my knees as they forced me down. My father stood over me, breathing heavily, holding the small container of fuel normally used for lamps. I could smell it. Sharp. Bitter. He told me why he was doing it. "You chose death when you chose Isa." I looked up at him then, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for me. Fear that I had condemned my soul. In his mind, killing me wasn't murder. It was justice. It was mercy. I didn't beg. Instead, in that final moment, I whispered quietly to the one I now belonged to. "Jesus. Isa, be with me." And then he poured the fuel. The smell of fuel clung to my skin long before the fire came. I could feel it soaking through the thin fabric of my dress, dripping down my arms, burning my eyes. My wrists were tied behind my back, the coarse rope biting deeper with every movement. My knees pressed into the rough sand as my father circled me in silence. No shouting anymore. No curses. His decision had been made. My mother stood a few steps behind him. She didn't move. She didn't speak. I looked for her eyes, for any trace of mercy, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. I could hear Karim breathing behind me. Sharp, uneven. Was he afraid? Or proud? I'll never know. The first splash of fuel on my face made me choke. It filled my nose and mouth. My skin stung, not from flame, but from the poison itself. The air felt heavy, thick, like the world was closing in. I remember trying to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My tongue felt swollen. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say anymore. There were no arguments left to make. So I prayed. Not the prayers I had learned as a child. Not the memorized verses. Just one broken sentence, whispered again and again inside my mind. Jesus, please, stay with me. And then I saw it. A match. My father struck it once. It didn't light. I watched. He struck it again. This time, the flame caught. Time slowed. I watched that small, fragile flame flickering in his hand, just inches from my skin, and for a moment, it didn't seem real. This couldn't be how my life ended. Burned alive in the courtyard where I had once played as a little girl. But reality didn't care about my disbelief. He dropped the match. I heard the sound before I felt it, the sudden rush, the roar, like the breath of a monster. The fuel caught instantly, wrapping around my legs, my waist, climbing upwards as if the fire itself had hands pulling at me. Then came the pain. There are no words for that kind of pain. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't like a cut or a burn from the kitchen. It was total. It consumed me. The fire didn't burn on me, it burned through me. My skin shriveled, cracked, peeled in seconds. My hair ignited, the smell of it thick and choking. My screams ripped from my throat before I even realized I was screaming. The ropes burned too, but not fast enough. I fell sideways, my body unable to hold itself upright. Every nerve, every inch of me was screaming. My eyes burned, my lips melted against my teeth. My lungs filled with smoke. I couldn't see anymore. Only darkness and fire. Somewhere, in the middle of that agony, I begged for death. Please, let me die. And then, the pain stopped. Just like that. I didn't feel the fire anymore. I didn't feel the sand beneath me. I didn't hear the crackle of flames. Instead, there was silence. Peace. And when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the courtyard anymore. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The silence felt impossible, especially after the chaos I had just left behind. I looked around, expecting darkness, emptiness, but what I saw was unlike anything I had ever known. There was light everywhere. Not harsh. Not blinding. Soft. Pure. The kind of light that seemed to wrap around me, filling every space, but never hurting my eyes. It wasn't a place with walls or skies or ground. It was like standing inside warmth itself. I looked down, expecting to see my burned body. But I wasn't flesh anymore. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel heavy. I wasn't floating, but I wasn't standing either. I just existed. Whole. Calm. And then I felt it. A presence. Before I saw him, I knew he was there. I could feel his nearness like a heartbeat outside myself. I turned, slowly, unsure if I was afraid or relieved. And then I saw him. He stood not far from me. A man. But not just a man. I couldn't see his face clearly. Not because it was hidden, but because his face shone so brightly that every feature blended into the light around him. His robe was white, not the white of cloth, but the white of light itself. His hands. I remember his hands. Strong, scarred, yet gentle. They were stretched out towards me, as if inviting me, yet not forcing me to come. I knew instantly. This was Isa. This was Jesus. The one who had whispered my name. The one I had cried out to as the flames consumed me. In that moment, every fear I had ever carried melted away. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't alone. I wasn't abandoned. His presence filled every emptiness inside me, the emptiness I had tried to fill with rituals, with prayers I never understood, with obedience born from fear. And then he spoke. His voice wasn't like the voices of men. It didn't echo. It didn't ring. It moved through me, gentle yet powerful, as though he spoke to every part of me at once. Aisha, he said. Just my name. But in that name, he said everything. I couldn't stop the tears. I didn't even know if I still had tears in this form, but I felt them. Not sadness. Not pain. But release. Freedom. He stepped closer. I have chosen you. I remember those words clearly. I didn't ask why. I didn't question. In that moment, I understood in ways that words could never explain. He wasn't offering me a choice between life and death. He was giving me life itself. A love I didn't need to earn. A place where I belonged not for what I had done, but simply because he loved me. Then, he showed me. I can't explain how. He didn't speak, yet I saw. I saw faces of people from faraway places, women, children, men. People in pain. People in fear. I didn't know them, but somehow, I knew they were part of my story. People I was meant to touch, to help, to lead toward him. I wanted to stay. I wanted to remain there, wrapped in his presence, never returning to the world that had burned me. But he looked at me, and his voice came again. You must go back. I felt my heart, if I still had one, break at that moment. No, please, I whispered. Let me stay. But he shook his head gently. Your time is not finished. They must hear. I didn't ask who. I didn't ask what. Deep inside, I understood. My pain wasn't meaningless. My suffering wasn't wasted. What had happened to me wasn't the end. He reached out his hand once more. As I reached toward him, his final words echoed inside me. I am with you. And then, without warning, the light faded. And I fell. I opened my eyes in a hospital bed. My entire body was wrapped in thick white gauze, and the air smelled like antiseptic and smoke. At first, I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But I was alive. That alone was a miracle. The doctors couldn't explain it. They said I should have died from the burns. They didn't know how my heart had survived the trauma, how I was even breathing on my own. I didn't need their explanations. I knew why I was alive. I remembered every moment in that place of light. I remembered his voice, his face, his promise. I stayed in the hospital for weeks, guarded by local police, barely able to eat or drink. No one from my family came to see me. Not once. I overheard nurses whispering. One said my father had told the village I was dead. Another said he had sworn to finish what he started if I ever returned home. My heart ached, not just from the pain of rejection, but because I still loved them. I prayed for them, even then. Through a nurse's contact, a local Christian aid worker found me. Her name was Miriam. She came with quiet eyes and gentle hands, never asking too many questions, just helping me bathe, helping me heal. And one day, when I was strong enough to sit up, she brought me a Bible. A real one. I cried as I held it in my hands. The same words I had once read in secret on a dim screen were now open before me, freely, with no fear. For the first time in my life, I was free to love Jesus in the light. Miriam helped arrange my escape. She knew a Christian family across the border, in Tunisia, who agreed to shelter me. I crossed the desert in the back of a truck, body weak, heart pounding, eyes full of hope. When I stepped into their home, they hugged me like I was one of their own. They didn't ask for anything in return. They simply said, "Welcome, sister." I began a new life, slowly, painfully, but joyfully. I joined a small group of believers who met in secret, and for the first time, I sang worship songs aloud, lifting my voice with tears running down my cheeks. They didn't care that I was broken. They didn't care that I came from a different background. They only cared that I had met Jesus. Now, I spend my days sharing my story with others, quietly, carefully, but boldly. I meet women like me, hidden, afraid, questioning. And I tell them there is a Savior who sees them, who loves them, who calls them by name. His name is Jesus. And he is worth everything. Forgiving them was harder than surviving. I don't say that lightly. The wounds on my skin healed long before the wounds in my heart. There were nights, even after finding safety, when I would wake up sweating, gasping for air, my father's voice echoing in my dreams. I would remember the match falling, the roar of the fire, the way my mother stood in silence. Those memories weren't easy to forget. Sometimes, I wondered if I ever truly would. I wrestled with anger more than I wanted to admit. How could they do that to me? How could a father, a mother, look at their daughter and choose death over love? Even as I read the words of Jesus, the words about loving your enemies, about forgiving those who persecute you, I felt something inside me resist. My heart was heavy. My prayers often ended in silence. I wanted to follow Jesus, but this felt impossible. Then, one night, after weeks of silent struggle, I fell to my knees and cried out, not in strength but in weakness. Jesus, I can't forgive them. I don't know how. Please, help me. I didn't hear a voice that night. I didn't see a vision. But deep inside, I felt his answer. Simple. Clear. I forgave you. Those words broke me. I remembered who I had been before. Lost. Empty. Drowning in fear. And yet, he had loved me. He had chosen me. He had called me his daughter. Not because I was good, but because he was. How could I, having received that mercy, withhold it from others? Even from those who tried to kill me? Slowly, painfully, I began to pray for them. Not for their punishment. Not for their destruction. But for their salvation. Each night, I whispered their names. My father, Ibrahim. My mother, Fatima. My brother, Karim. I asked Jesus to show himself to them the way he had shown himself to me. I prayed that one day, they too would know his love. Forgiving them didn't erase the pain. It didn't make what happened right. But it freed me from the chains of hate. And in that freedom, I found peace. A peace only Jesus could give. If you're listening to my story right now, maybe you're carrying questions like I once did. Maybe you're wondering if Jesus is real, if he sees you, if he cares. I want you to know something, he does. He sees you right now, wherever you are. It doesn't matter where you were born, what your family believes, or what your past looks like. Jesus is not a religion. He's not a set of rules. He is alive. He is love. And he is calling you, just like he called me. I used to think I had to earn love. I thought obedience would save me. But nothing I ever did filled the emptiness inside me until I met him. Jesus loved me when I had nothing to offer. He stood beside me when everyone else turned away. Even in the fire, he never left me. I am alive today not because I am strong, but because he is merciful. And that same mercy is waiting for you too. If you're afraid right now, afraid of what it will cost to follow him, I understand. I lost everything. My family, my home, my old life. But what I gained is worth far more. Jesus is worth everything. No matter the cost, no matter the suffering, no matter the loss, you are never alone when you walk with him. He will carry you. He will heal you. He will never forsake you. And to my brothers and sisters who are suffering right now because of their faith, I want to say this: stay strong. Your tears are seen. Your prayers are heard. Jesus has not forgotten you. The world may call you lost, but heaven calls you chosen. Keep trusting him. He is worth it. I am living proof. If my testimony has touched your heart, I invite you to take a moment and think about your own journey. Are you searching for hope? Are you longing for the truth? Jesus is waiting for you, just like he waited for me. You can speak to him right now, wherever you are. You don't need perfect words. Just an open heart. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below, even if it's just one word, so we know you're here, and so others know they're not alone. And if you're being persecuted for your faith, or if you're curious but afraid, know this: we are praying for you. You are loved. You are seen. And you are never forgotten. Jesus is calling. Will you answer?